Hello, and welcome to my channel. My name is Jonathan Cohn, and today I will be doing a video ranking Star Wars comics. I just did a video recently ranking the Star Wars YA novels, and now I'll be doing a video ranking the Star Wars comics. I have to warn you, I am nowhere near as well versed in the Star Wars comics as some people are. I have just talked about the ones I've read, and I've, for the most part, really enjoyed what I've read. I've read 11 bind-ups. I've read one bind-up from the Legends line, and then 10 from the canon. Now, I do have one Legends bind-up that I read. It was the Shadows of the Empire comics, but that was years ago, and I don't even own them. I really enjoyed those comics. They were weird, but they were really entertaining. A lot like the novel, but a little bit different, but I don't have that, so I won't be talking about it. So I'll be talking about the 11 that I do have, the one Legends, and the rest are canon. So why don't I begin with my number 11? My number 11 is Star Wars TIE Fighter by Jody Houser. This is the weakest of the ones I've read. It's the only one I just don't like. I was already having a hard time getting into the Alphabet Squadron novels. I thought they were a great idea. I thought that the idea that they were pulling from the same fan base that was supposed to like the X-Wing novels, I thought that was a great idea. I liked the idea of putting together a group of pilots who are also different. I liked the ideas behind the novels. I just didn't enjoy the novels. I didn't enjoy the writing style that Alexander Freed used for them. And so I picked up this comic when they did the crossover, hoping to really enjoy it. And it just didn't add much. What it adds, I think, is superfluous, and it's not an entertaining story. I wasn't pulled in or anything. It was just It was just a comic. The pilots weren't particularly interesting. The characters weren't. The best thing about it was some of the ties, and even then, the ties to the Alphabet Squadron novels aren't that great. So this is the only one I don't actually like. The next one I feel kind of indifferent about. Like I kind of read it a little, but I didn't really like it, and that's the Darth Vader. It's a bind-up of issues 7 through 12 by Karen Gillan. It's called Shadows and Secrets. This was a bind-up where I had struggled with it because I didn't love what was happening with Vader. I didn't love the way that Karen Gillan wrote Vader, and at the same time, I don't care for the character of Aphra. She's never been compelling to me. I know that a lot of Star Wars comic readers love her. She's just not as compelling a character to me, and so it just didn't do that much for me. There was some bounty hunter stuff in this bind-up that was cool, but other than that, I just felt indifferent. There was nothing in this comic that I thought was bad or it was just not interesting to me. So that's my number 10. Getting into my number 9 is Kanan the Last Padawan. This would have been higher up on my list, but I'm a big continuity guy, and when you override your continuity, it's kind of frustrating. And this comic deals with after Depa Billaba is killed by the by the clone troopers in Order 66. What does Kanan do when he's on the run? And it's a really fascinating story that this tells in that sense. The problem is it's been at least the first issue has been mostly overridden by the Bad Batch episode 1, which basically changed the way that whole story happened. And I just I don't like it when the TV shows override the books or comics. That's why I didn't like in Clone Wars Season 7 that it overrode the Ahsoka novel. And so this book was higher because it was very enjoyable, but because it was overridden like that, it just frustrated me to no end. I did really like the artwork in this one, and I really liked the story as a whole. I thought they did a good job. And it's also interesting because the writer of this, Greg Weisman, was one of the writers on Season 1. I think he was even considered one of the co-creators maybe, but I know he was an executive producer and writer on Season 1 of Rebels, and then he left mysteriously, and they said, oh, he's going to go to this comic. Well, he did 12 issues of comics, this and 6 more issues after this, and then, poof, he basically left Star Wars, hasn't done anything for Star Wars for a while, and I wonder what happened, what falling out or what things happened there. But I really enjoyed this, and I hope that Greg Weisman gets more stories in the future, so I liked this one. The next one I'll talk about is another Karen Gillan Darth Vader run. This is the first 6, just entitled Vader. What makes this one so good, and this is my number 8 on my list, what makes this so good is its connectivity to Skywalker Strikes. The two of these basically take place concurrently. And this one, I liked Vader a little bit more. It told some weird stories in here. But I liked Vader slowly coming to the realization of who Luke Skywalker is, and all the bounty hunters he has to work with, and him meeting Aphra for the first time. All that kind of stuff is really fun in here. Of the Karen Gillan stuff I've read, this is my favorite. And so I one day might pick up the rest of the Vader line just to complete it, but because I'm not a big comics collector, I don't know if I actually will ever. So this is why this is my number 8. My number 7 is Skywalker Strikes, which the Vader comic connects to. This, according to I believe it was to John Jackson Miller's website. He has a website, Comicron, which is all about comics history. He said Skywalker Strikes #1 was the most sold issue of comics in the 2010s, like for a whole decade, which is really interesting to me. And this relaunched the Star Wars canon comics. And then you had Vader, which went right alongside with it, and the two of these were running concurrently. And it was a big deal. Jason Aaron was getting to write all these comics. It was a big announcement, big deal, all that kind of stuff. And so I wanted to pick it up and see what happens. And it was quite enjoyable. I liked the way that they wrote Luke in this. I liked the way they wrote Leia and Han. I liked the surprises that happen. I liked the writing. I think Lando showed up briefly in this. This is just entertaining. And it's one of those comics that I'm like, man, I wish I'd picked up more. And I probably could order more and pick up more. But for right now, this is what I have of the Skywalker Strikes, which is my number 7. Going into my number 6 is a Charles Soule one. This was a lot of fun to read. This gave a lot of backstory of Poe's character, and this just told a really good original story. That's a great thing that comics can do, is that they can tell original stories with characters that you couldn't do in other media. And for some reason, Poe hasn't been big in the novels. He had one YA novel, which not much happened in, and then he also has been a minor character in some other books. But this was when Charles Soule just got to write the character of Poe Dameron and just take over the whole character. And I think he did a great job with it. I like some of the Imperials that are in this book. I like the weird aliens that are introduced, and this has an element of a epic fantasy to it, with part of the quest towards the beginning of what they're trying to deal with. I don't want to give stuff away, but that was really interesting. So overall, really enjoyed this one. This is my number 6. Getting into my number 5 is another Charles Soule one, but it is from his Darth Vader line. It is Legacy's End. This is issues 7 through 12 of this. This one has to do with Jocasta Nu and Vader, and this was entertaining. Let me tell you, this book was just so entertaining. It got into Vader more. I like Charles Soule writing of Vader more than I like Karen Gillan's writing of Vader, and I thought that Charles Soule really told the interesting story within the Temple issues of this one. And there were a few non-Temple issues in this one, but the Temple stuff was, I thought, the best. And I mean, that cover art is just gorgeous, and all the artwork in here was good. And there's some interesting stuff with the Emperor in this one, I believe. So this is my number 5. Getting into my number 4 is my one and only Legends comic, though I want to get more, I just don't know where to find them, and that is the first 6 issues of the Knights of the Old Republic by one of my favorite authors ever, John Jackson Miller. This book takes place mostly on Taurus. I think it's Taurus? Whatever. It takes place on the planet that is in the Knights of the Old Republic game. It really feels like an extension of that, like if you were playing as different characters in that game. It tells an interesting story. Griff shows up in this. Griff's a great character, really fun. I like the way John Jackson Miller writes. There is a huge, this has one of the best hooks of any Star Wars content in its first issue. I read it and I was like, whoa, you can do that? That's awesome. And so the hook in the first issue just completely changes where you think you're going to go and where it actually goes. And it becomes some entertainment media. I like this comic more than I like the video game, although I've gotten about as far into this comic series as it into the video game series. And I believe they did 50 issues. So this ran for a long time. So It's called Volume 1 is called Commencement, and so that is my number 4. Let's get into my number 3 is the last Charles Soule one I have on here, and that is Darth Vader Imperial Machine. It's the first 6 of his Darth Vader run, and I liked seeing immediately post Order 66 the way that Charles Soule writes him. I like seeing the Empire building. I like seeing the way Vader connects with the Emperor and some of the give and take that their relationship has. I like seeing the different Imperials reacting to Vader for the first time. I like seeing Vader trying off fighting in his suit, hunting down Jedi. This is just an entertaining book. This is how Vader should be told, I think. I think this is one of the best Vader stories I've read. That's my number 3. Getting into my number 2 is the only adaptation I have on the list, because it's the only adaptation I've read, but it was super entertaining. And this was Star Wars Thrawn by Jody Houser. This is an adaptation of the Thrawn novel. I read the Thrawn novel the day it came out, and I was enraptured by it. It is still one of the best Star Wars novels ever written. As a single novel, Timothy Zahn wrote a Sherlock Holmes level mystery with a Star Wars plot, with some political intrigue, with some climbing through the military ranks of a military science fiction novel. It had everything you could love. And it had some of the best characters like Eli Vanto and Thrawn, 2 of the best characters in Star Wars. And so when it came to they announced this comic adaptation, I don't believe it sold that well because we never got an adaptation for books 2 and 3, but I think that it was so well done. It was, as Thrawn would say, it was so artistically done. Okay. So what made this adaptation good was they distilled this enormous novel. It was a big novel. It was 400 pages into just this little, I think it was 4 or 5 issues. It's short. But it's really quick, and it's just so fast-paced, and it tells the story exactly as it needed to be told in a comics format. And whenever I reread the book, it's just so visual that I can feel the things that are happening in the book now, and it just really enhances the book. Also, I mean, the story by Zahn was just so good, it would be hard to mess it up, but Jody Houser just takes it and makes it good for the comics medium. And I've heard that that's really one of her strengths. And so she has the lowest one on the list and my second highest, because I thought she just did an amazing job adapting this one. All right, now we're getting into my number 1. And I've talked about it a few times on the channel, but I don't talk about it often enough. And that is Star Wars Shattered Empire. This is the story that everyone should have read in the lead up to The Force Awakens. Not because everyone read Aftermath thinking, yeah, we're gonna get what happened after Return of the Jedi. And they kind of did, but it wasn't what they wanted. And then Lost Stars was an amazing novel that really doesn't have anything to do with post Return of the Jedi until the very, very end. And then this book is literally they just did all the dancing, they just posed for the picture at the end of Return of the Jedi. Yub Nub or the Victory Celebration just played. Camera cuts, this book starts. And it's by Greg Rucka, who I think is a very underrated Star Wars author. How does he not have a full-length adult novel? He just has middle grade and comics. Anyway, that's a different story. But this comic, it's very short, but it tells the story of Han and Luke, as well as some new characters, Shara Bey and Kaz Dameron, the 2 parents of Poe Dameron. And we really get to see them shine. There's a great love story part of this book. It's great to see a good married couple. There are a lot of things in this book that tie into other things in Star Wars, things that tie into Aftermath, things that tie into the Battlefront 2 video game, things that tie into the Poe Dameron novel. There's so much in this book that ties into other Star Wars material. It's just brilliantly written. And so I was very happy reading this book. I had a grin ear to ear, and this was one of the first comics I did read when I got this whole comics batch, and I was so glad that I did. And so that's why it's my number 1. So those are the Star Wars comics that I have purchased and read, and those were my rankings for them. If you've read the Star Wars comics, which ones are your favorites? I know there's hundreds and hundreds, probably thousands out there, but let me know which bind-ups are your favorites. Let me know of these bind-ups what you thought. Did I get yours favorite in the right place, or did you really hate where I put one? Let me know all that down in the comments down below. And until next time, I'm Jonathan, and thank you for watching.